We've heard the news from the BBC. Now it's your turn.
You can post on facebook.com/World Have Your Say or get in touch via Twitter at BBC_WHYS.
Welcome to World Have Your Say.
Hello there. In a famous scene in Brigitte Bardot's 1960s movie Le Mépris, the world-famous French actress lies naked, face down, only partly covered with a sheet. In a depiction of the same scene in the latest edition of French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, a cartoonist has replaced Bardot with the Prophet Muhammad, a cameraman behind him, a direct reference to the film clip which has led to angry protests by Muslims around the world over the last week. It's one of many cartoons depicting Muhammad all through the magazine. So, is this a needless provocation? Zinka in Nigeria posts on Facebook, coming on the heels of last week's events, the cartoons are stupidly satirical. Mark says on Google+, people are getting tired of being told what they can and cannot say or think or write. And Emmanuel, who's tweeting in the west of France, says it's just a bunch of old fogies who finally found a way of selling their vulgar magazine. Well, with Charlie Hebdo one of the top 10 worldwide trends on Twitter, we're live on World Have Your Say. I'm Ben James. Wherever you are in the world, join in now by calling country code 44 20 31 62 42 42.
Get in touch via email worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com.
And many of you are having similar conversations. France's L'Express newspaper is asking provocation or freedom of expression. CNN is asking free speech or incitement. Well, let's speak to Agnes Poirier, political commentator in Paris. Nabila Ramdani, French journalist currently in Istanbul. Mohammed, who's a listener to World Have Your Say in Finland. And Tim, who's an artist early in the morning there in New York. Welcome to the programme, all four of you. Nabila, let's start with you. What do you think? Needless provocation?
Well, Charlie Hebdo has absolute form on this one. In 2005, it republished 12 deeply offensive Danish cartoons. And last year only, at the moment when Islamic groups were doing particularly well following the Arab Spring revolutions in Libya and Tunisia, Charlie Hebdo published offensive pictures of the Prophet with the caption 100 lashes if you don't die of laughter. And of course, it was particularly offensive to Muslims in those countries, but around the world, because there was a serious message behind its alleged humor, which is that Islam is not compatible with democracy. But you have to put Charlie Hebdo's publications, or indeed use of offensive imagery about the Prophet, in the context of Islam in France. And of course, France is the host of 6 million Muslims in France, and they experience routinely discrimination in every walk of life, including housing, education, employment, and indeed religious expression. And in that context, you can, draw the conclusion very clearly that this magazine is clearly designed to cause maximum offence to a respected religion.
OK. Agnes?
Well, where to start? Charlie Hebdo is a satirist magazine. If you don't share their sense of humour, and I very often don't buy the magazine. I think, is it a provocation? And, blasphemy is not a crime in France anymore. And when Charlie Hebdo makes fun at other religions, nobody talks about it. So perhaps there's an issue, perhaps there's a debate. I don't disagree at all with Nabila when she says that there is, discrimination in France against, Muslim. I totally agree, and that's really a problem. Now, the editor of Charlie Hebdo, I think quite rightly this morning, said, what provocation is, since when is freedom of speech a provocation? What is very important is that in a democracy or in a country like France, the Republic has to protect its citizens, but not their beliefs. A belief doesn't have to be protected. Citizens have to be. It's a subtle nuance, but it's a fundamental one.
If I may reply to Agnès on a particular point of the law, this is a recurrent debate, of course, which centers on the issue of free speech and what we should or should not be allowed to express in a democracy. And it has to be pointed out very firmly that France outlaws Holocaust denial and indeed anti-Semitic behavior. And there was a highly publicized case over the last summer when British fashion designer John Galliano was fined after being found guilty of launching an anti-Semitic rant at people in a bar. It was a private moment. He was drunk, and yet he was found guilty, arrested, and convicted. And I think it was right and proper to punish him in that manner, because such comments are, of course, unbearable and not tolerated under French law. And you know, one wonders, there was a similar incident involving another fashion designer, Guerlain, who appeared sober on national television in France, suggesting that black people are lazy niggers, if I may put it that bluntly. So one wonders if the same principles which outlaw firmly anti-Semitic behavior in France should perhaps extend to other forms of discrimination involving other minorities, and indeed when it involves ridiculing, insulting, and ravishing Islam and everything it stands for. And I'm not convinced at all that these repeated vicious attacks fit into freedom of expression. And that's a very important point of the law that needs to be addressed in France and indeed in Western democracies.
And lots of people are getting in touch from around the world listening to this programme. Reginald in Ghana tweets, very needless provocation. I guess they're also trying to make a name for themselves by stoking an already fiercely burning fire. Justin in Trinidad and Tobago posts on Facebook, these cartoons could not come at a worse time. What next? One has to wonder if there's a conspiracy to instigate World War III through these actions. And by the way, if you're listening wherever you are around the world, do call in and join in the conversation if you've got an opinion on this. It's country code 4420 31 62 4242. Tim in New York, how do you feel about this conversation? Where do you stand?
I can't speak to the specifics of French law, but I can speak to the idea of what an artist is supposed to do. As soon as you blame the artist in this situation, you're dehumanizing the perpetrators of the violence. You're saying that it's like you're saying that the violent rioters are a force of nature that was set in motion by this person, that this was a choice by the artist to cause people to riot. It's not true. I mean, that's ridiculous. These thugs who are threatening people for saying words think that violence, murder, firebombs are an appropriate response to a drawing, right? And I'm a little upset at the idea of comparing the protection of this group, who has shown violence, right, in reaction to this, to the protection of Jews, who are the subjects of violence. You know, that's kind of a space for me that makes me a little uncomfortable.
Let's bring in Mohammed in Finland, who's back with us, I think. Hi, Mohammed. Welcome to the programme. Do you think these cartoons are provocative?
Thank you for having me. I personally think that there is nothing new in this event, because such events happened before and now it's happening again. So it was done before and the reaction is known, and the one who did it, he knew what was the reaction going to be. So to me, it seems a little bit biased act. That is how I say it.
Biased in what way? What would you think, like Sabir, for example, on Facebook, he's saying enough is enough, everybody insults our Prophet Muhammad. Are you saying, like he's saying, that you feel Muslims are being picked on?
Biased in the sense that it targets a certain community among a certain religious community. That's why I say it a little bit biased act. And the second thing is that things are perceived differently in different cultures. And usually these cartoons are used to mock someone or to make fun of something. And people are sometimes very emotional to certain things. If on the one hand there is freedom of speech, then on the other hand there is the freedom of expression. So if someone makes cartoons or makes such statements, violent statements that could cause violence, and he says it is his freedom of speech, then the other person, he has the freedom of expression, that how he reacts to it. So I think for the known issues, for the known reactions, we should be more responsible towards such things. And unfortunately, sometimes these things are used for wicked purpose. For example, to get some popularity by some newspaper or by some person, to get popularity in the world that he's known everywhere. just to earn some cheap fame.
Okay.
Sometimes these things are done.
Okay, Tim, were you trying to come back in there?
Okay, I would like that person to clarify. Is violence an acceptable form in which to express yourself? That's what I would like to hear from that. That's really alarming to say that's an acceptable reaction to freedom of speech.
Violence certainly has no justification for itself, because usually the victim is not the one who actually raised that issue. For example, the ambassador for USA who got killed in Libya, I really feel sorry for him, because he was not the responsible person for that. But the person who was doing that, he knew that the Americans elsewhere in the world could be in trouble, and even that he did that.
Okay, let me interrupt you there, just because there's somebody we've got on the phone now who I'm sure you'd all be very interested to speak to. Gérard Billard is the editor-in-chief of the magazine in question, Charlie Hebdo. Gérard, welcome to the programme.
Yes, hello, how do you do?
Just explain to us why you've decided to publish these cartoons in this particular edition of the magazine.
There is only one reason. It's the news. It was the news of the week. We had this silly movie, this silly film about the prophet Mahomet, and we have the burning of the American embassy in Libya. We have manifestations all over the world because of this movie. We have violence, we have death because of this movie, because of the violence of religious integrism. So it's our job. We are a satirical, a political magazine. We publish in France, which is a laic nation, and we are atheist. So we are against all religions.
Okay, and you mentioned the word laic there. I should explain to people that means secular, a secular country that France is. Moses is posted on our Facebook page. He's in Malawi. And Gérard, he says that people can argue that it's freedom of speech all they want, but the truth is that these provocations are costing lives. Do you worry about the potential consequences of this magazine?
There's not. These publications will not cost lives. Who killed people? We'll not kill people. I'm sorry. We're not the violent ones. We are just journalists who make their job. That's all. The violent people, the people who kill people, the violent ones who kill people. We're not these ones. We just make articles. We just write articles. We just make cartoons. That's all.
Nabila, would you like to speak to Gérard?
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to react to what Gérard has been saying. And I have to say that it's not just journalism and it's not just news, as he put it. It's absolutely provocative journalism. And one should stress emphatically that freedom of speech comes with responsibility. It's not freedom of rubbishing a religion, of insulting a religion. It's not freedom of Muslim baiting. That's not what freedom of speech is all about. And that's why in Western democracies we have very strong legislation framing that freedom of speech. For example, it's not permitted to incite to racial hatred or to incite to violence through provocative journalism like Charlie Hebdo's journalism. And Gérard, clearly, and he said it, has in mind the trouble, the unrest, and the absolute anger that's sweeping across the Muslim world, where people are dying. So he can't say that it's not costing human lives, and he can't say that it's, you know, he can't take into account that type of responsibility. It has to be said very firmly again and again, freedom of speech is not the freedom to rubbish or to insult a religion. We have very strong legislations in Western democracies, including in France, where the law does not permit that kind of insult. As I was saying earlier, there are very strong laws against anti-Semitic behavior, attitude. The fashion designer John Galliano has been punished for that.
Yeah.
And I can't see why a struggling publication like Charlie Hebdo, which is deliberately taking the decision to insult a religion and indeed its worshippers to make a capital gain out of it, should not be punished under French law.
And Agnes, yes, you can come in 1 second, but I just want to get Gérard to respond, if you would, Gérard.
Yes, we don't insult anyone. I'm sorry. A religion is not a person. I'm sorry, but according to the laws in France, we had a trial for the Mahomet cartoons. We won this trial. The French justice said we didn't insult anyone. So we won this.
The problem is the double standard aspect of the legislation in France, which allows Muslim baiting and doesn't permit anti-Semitic attitude, and that's what.
No. I'm sorry. We don't anti-Semitic is a different problem. Yeah. Anti-Semitism
why is it a different problem? It's a worldwide religion as well.
And I did just
be respected like other religions.
Yeah, and I did just promise Agnes to chip in because you wanted to say something. Agnes, go ahead.
Well, you know what? I just want to side with Gérard here because, you know, there's no double standard, Nabila, as you know very well in the French law. The French law doesn't protect one religion against another. You know, Judaism is not more protected in France than Islam. This is actually a lie. Okay, so what Charlie Hebdo, and it's really not my cup of, magazine, I would say, what Charlie Hebdo is doing is not attacking people, nor is it inciting hatred. It is perhaps insulting a religion, but insulting a religion, whatever this religion is no crime. It might be tasteless, or it might shock people, but it is not a crime, and therefore they should be allowed to do it.
And it is worth saying that in 2008, Charlie Hebdo did publish a Pope special, which resulted in an unsuccessful court action against the magazine of inciting hate. So there have been previous examples of this magazine talking about other religions as well. Can I bring in Dr. Osama Hassan, who's an imam and a senior researcher at the Quilliam Foundation? He's here in the UK. Hello, Osama. Welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon.
And let me put a couple of comments to you on this point. Andrew posts on Facebook, satire is part of the Western tradition. Muslims have to accept that. Jane posts on Facebook from Australia, a sense of humour is in order and a rational maturity. Do you think that people taking offence to this are lacking a sense of humour?
Partly, but more so, I think it's misunderstanding the importance of freedom of speech and expression in the West. 25 years ago, I was protesting against the Rushdie book, Satanic Verses, but then I learned about freedom of speech, etc. later. And what we need is more civilized dialogue around freedom of speech. So in the Muslim world, the Prophet is very revered, and he is a person. He's more than a person. I understand the editor saying we don't insult people and a religion is not a person. But to a million of devout Muslims, the Prophet is a person and more beloved than their own self. Whereas, of course, in Western countries, freedom of speech is a basic, fundamental, almost sacred right. And we need that dialogue, such as the online free speech debate at Oxford. And but we also have to look at the racist context. I take issue with our American friend who said Muslims are not victims of violence, only Jews are, because that's simply not true, especially across Europe and the United States. Secondly, when the Satanic Verses controversy erupted in the 80s, my local MP, Bernie Grant, also said that he supported Rushdie's freedom of speech, but he was worried that the UK was a racist context at the time, and he was very concerned why that book was published at that time. So it could be provocation. And, famously in free speech theory, you can't shout fire in a crowded theatre. As other people have said, there are limits to free speech. There is no absolute free speech. And it's up to the courts and authorities to frame those. However, I think what we really need now is for everybody to calm down, people to stop rioting and inciting violence, and to continue a civilized debate around issue the freedom of speech. As I said, the Oxford University debate has 10 draft principles, which are absolutely excellent, and I'd recommend those.
Gerard Biard's had to go, by the way, from Charlie Hebdo. I think he's probably got a fairly busy day ahead of him. Kavork in London's posted on our Facebook page, offended, don't read it. David in Kenya says on Facebook, this would cause more provocation in the Muslim world. It should not be published. Derek says on Facebook, I'm a fully fledged Christian. I strongly believe that hitting on a person's belief is totally irresponsible and appalling. Mohammed in Finland, if you're still there, what do you think about the comments saying that people should have more of a sense of humour?
Before that, I would comment on what the representative of that magazine said. He himself accepted that he is atheist and is against all the religions. So that's a bias act. That's what he himself admits. And about sense of humor, I support it because there should be something like that you really enjoy about something. But you cannot enjoy mocking a sensitive issue like this one, because in Muslim faith they don't like the cartoons of any prophet, be it Prophet Moses or Prophet Jesus.
And Angora says on our Facebook page, Jesus has on several occasions been portrayed in a manner that's demeaning and provocative, but then goes on to say it's high time that Muslims exercised tolerance. And other comments coming in. Let's have a look. Tobias says on the Google Plus page that we have certainly a good time to get a large edition of one's magazine sold. Whether it's funny or not is up to everyone to decide, but what's certainly not up for discussion is that it's covered by freedom of speech. Agnes, just very quickly, that point about a good time to get a large edition of one's magazine sold, do you think that the magazine is trying to capitalise on this moment and sell lots of copies? I suppose that's what it's there to do.
Well, I'm sure there's an argument to say, it's very opportunistic. On the other hand, Charlie Hebdo is a news magazine, made of cartoons. That's this specialty. So, if you're the editor of a weekly that covers the news and you avoid treating of something that is quite important, that is to say the unrest in the Middle East because of a crap film.
Okay, well, let me just stop you there because the programme is coming to an end, but thank you very much, all of you. Sarah tweets from Limoges, I can't make my minds up. Well, if you can, post on facebook.com/World Have Your Say.